Hello, friend.
Hey, how's it going, Derek?
It's good. I'm excited. We've promised everyone a cool set of episodes, and I think it's very timely right now for when we're recording. Talking about and I'm going to say this too. I've always felt not shame. That's the wrong word, but I love marching band. I think marching band is the best. And sometimes we get some serious folks who are like, I just have to tolerate marching season
Mhm.
so I can actually get to teach music. But I'm excited because this is something that I really, really, and I've told you before, uh, I still watch, I love to watch the indoor stuff when it comes on YouTube, or I'll watch old DCI. I
Yeah.
still get excited. I get excited about the warm up things they do with the dissonance and it's just, I'm that guy. So I'm excited. How are we going to help people in these series of episodes?
Well, the whole goal, and it started as a little project I was thinking about doing maybe one or two podcasts. And then as time progressed, it ended up being quite a number of podcasts. And my hope is we can kind of continue that format through this process. But we learn music as a beginner, or maybe start piano as a kindergartner, and music is music is music. And then all of a sudden, as an educator, you're tasked with the idea of let's do a marching band. And we don't do a lot of preparation for that in university and high school, preparing to teach marching band.
Right.
We do a lot with what we do with our instruments. So what I'm trying to do is get a kind of a basic integration of this program in as small a package as possible to be able to be used within our given schedules, because
Okay.
every school has different schedules. They might just have Monday night from 6 to 7:30. uh,
Sure.
Another school might have 8 hours a week plus 5 invitationals they're going to. So they've got to take what I'm giving them and make it fit their particular program. It's not
Right.
broken down into specific items per session. It's more like a series of whatever, and I just kind of chopped it apart like pieces of a pizza. So don't think that it's going to be, oh, this session's on marking time and marching backwards. It's
I get
not.
it.
It's not being addressed in that format.
And I would, because you said everybody's schedule is different, and I'm remembering we have to factor in that. That's so off topic, but I'm gonna say it anyway. We got all the heat considerations to go with this now. So if we
Yeah.
have a good plan going on, what do you call your little device? The You point it at stuff and it tells you what the actual heat index
Oh,
is.
yeah. The wet bulb
It's,
globe. I get the words confused. I don't know. I
I know
just
I
know
get it.
I have it at my house and I can just point it.
It's just an awkward thing to call it, but
Yeah.
it just kind of demonstrates to me the actual need to have a plan and to know what the goal is and where we're headed. So even if we get interrupted, we can still look at our plan or know what we're trying to teach.
Yes. That's a great way of saying it. That's awesome. Because we are going to get interrupted with something, and we need to know how to get back on track
Yeah.
quickly. And so many directors and myself, when I started teaching marching band, I just all I had was my memories of being in marching,
Right.
and
And that's me.
we just tried to do what we could. And no one was there to really set up a full functioning system for us. So that's kind of the goal here, get this full functioning system. And Rick, our director, is going to upload all the notes from these podcasts, plus my full Mike Lunney marching Bible thingy. That way it's going to be in word format. So the directors can take it, delete what you don't like, which is awesome, and put in the things that you want in your system. Make it tailor fit to your band program. Because if there's anything, I know there's lots of opinions in music. It's a
What?
very subjective art form, like every art form.
Say it. What?
Uh, but marching is like it on steroids. You know what I mean? There's people who will live and die by toes together or toes apart. I'm thinking, just do what fits for your band.
Right.
What you have time to clean, kind of thing. And this whole system kind of evolved through my career, and it's simply what's worked best for me, Derek. I mean, I don't
Right.
know any other way to say it. And probably 99% of it, say probably, I'm trying to, hedge my bets here. 99% of it is stolen, and
Yeah.
it's things I've picked up from other people, and then maybe 1% is my stuff. So please feel free to put it in your handouts and whatever you need to do.
So couple of quick things. First of all, I noticed you elevated Rick from in the chair to director.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, you're right.
Congratulations, Rick.
He's like the George Lucas of
Promotion.
Ask
Woo!
Mike. No, no pay involved with that.
We'll double your salary.
That's right. We'll double your salary.
Everything times zero.
Yeah.
So, but as I peeked ahead at some of this, because this is much more, in my mind, a structured thought process, it struck me, just like you're saying, my experience, if you asked me to define how we learn marching band, it was just repetition, 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 repetition. I
Mhm.
don't care if it's fun. I told you to hit this point, and we're just going to keep doing it till you finally get it right. And I loved it, but it almost fits into the I'm going to beat you into, a decent band here.
Yeah.
So I was glad to see some other things that I would have never thought about associating the terminology with marching band. So
Very
I
cool.
think this is cool, cool, cool. And let's just jump in, brother.
All
How
right,
are we
let's
going to
do it.
start this thing?
Well, in this first one, a lot of information, especially in this first one. I want to plug a book for for these guys. The book is called Beyond the Basics, and it's by Nick Benson, Adam Oswald, and Dylan Thompson. And I purchased that book, and I've used it. And you can get just a downloadable, put it on your, iPad and look at it. Lots of stuff. Plus, just from these podcasts, from 38 years of being a performer and an educator myself, and from being a teacher,
Right.
but I really think that teaching marching, the actual teaching of marching, not marching band, but the teaching of marching does not always receive the attention or respect that it probably deserves.
Here,
It,
here.
it's seen as like, I don't know, the guy that carries the shingles onto the roof, you
Right.
know, compared to the architect as the musician,
Right.
and we're just the guy that carries the shingles up the ladder and we're starting to hammer shingles down on the roof. And
White
I
collar,
think
blue collar.
yeah, yeah. So it's seen in that uh, light. It doesn't always receive the proper attention, whether it's marching band, drum and bugle corps, indoor ensembles. But the quality of the marching and the movement training is often what makes it possible to have an incredible organization. I don't think we truly link together the fact that how we play our instruments is linked completely to how we move our bodies on the field.
Hmm.
We keep working music, which is fine. It's in Derek's own words, it's a music first activity, and I would agree with that. But movement is a very close second, because without
Man.
proper movement, you will not ever be able to teach balance, blend, intonation, and technique, because they'll be fighting it. It's like I don't know, giving a Rubik's Cube to a guy in a kayak going over Niagara Falls. He's not going to pay attention to that Rubik's Cube very long. He's going to go, oh, crap, where we go? Oh, well, now we're going. So that Rubik's Cube's going to be thrown to the side. And I would dare say that happens to a lot of marching bands. What a strange example I just gave. But a lot of marching bands, they get into getting close to contests, and instead of nailing down those marching visual fundamentals and what we're doing with our bodies, they just keep hammering the music and it's not getting better, and they get frustrated. They don't
Right.
realize they're hammering into the wrong symptoms, you know?
Right.
So, so just things to think about right there. So try to, directors out there, put yourself in that position and think about how you approach those last 3 weeks before that first big contest.
Sure. First of all, I feel seen. Thank you.
Uh,
We're- I felt like I probably pushed too hard on that at one point.
no, 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 no. It's if there's no discussion, then one of us is not necessary.
But at the same time, it is also, uh, I would 100% agree with you that the point of the activity is marching well and creating great visual effects to go with that music. It should
Mhm.
be more harmonious than, and I think that's your point. I think that's cool.
But you're right. Music is job one, but it will never be achieved without
Right.
good approach to visual.
And at the same time, we walk this funny fence, Mike. We've had so many conversations about competition and what the competition should be. But if we're going to be competitive in the most positive way,
Hmm.
then we've got to make sure we can physically do the things it takes if we're saying music's our goal.
Yes.
We have to be able to physically carry ourselves and move to set from set to be able to still make good music.
Yeah,
It,
and to push back on your belief of music being the number one thing, just a little bit of humor here. I dare any director out there to send me a video of an impeccable visual marching band that plays poorly.
well, that's a good point.
I dare you. I dare you to do that. But I can send you 15 videos of bands that play really pretty well, but there's kids just floundering out there, because
I got it.
50% of the band plays the music. But I'll leave that line
No,
of
but I'll even do it this way.
yeah,
It and some of it is just me because I love drum corps. I
oh
love to
yeah,
watch
yeah.
it, and some of
Go
the runs that
Skyriders,
those
yeah.
the run that some of those guys, the technical music that they're pulling off. Sometimes I have to actually stop and go, oh, but wait, look how they're moving at the same time.
Mhm.
It's so I'm that's a concession to you. I get
Oh,
it.
well, thank you. Yeah, but you're right. When you see the Phantom Regiment do that famous YouTube clip where they're coming all the way across the field, playing at a 4 to 5 step size, there's about 15 things happening in between each step physically that
Right.
their bodies have to coordinate and do and be elbow to elbow. So if you ever have a chance, look that thing up, guys. To see that because it's just stunning. But yeah, you're right. We've got to make this work, and that's what the whole idea behind this series is. Where we're
Awesome.
trying to make
Well,
it easier for you guys to teach.
let's follow that yellow brick road. Get us all going.
All right, thank you for the Yellow Brick Road correlation to the Skyriders of Hutchinson,
You
Kansas.
got it.
That's our
Somewhere
that's
over that marching
That's
rainbow.
yeah, that's our uniforms. It's deconstructed yellow brick road going down the uniform into a drop
That's
with
so
Emerald
cool. I
City.
can't wait to see him.
So let's go grounded in heritage and tradition, but looking towards the future, my friends. All right,
And
back
a
to
quick shout out though, I'm going to say our mutual friend Mike Ellis helped design them.
oh yeah, he's the program coordinator with it, and he designed those uniforms. So Mike Ellis
That's so
is
cool. Yeah.
amazing.
Good job, Mike.
So we're lucky to have these alumni that are just stunningly good educators that do things for us on that for the Skyriders. So that's our shout out for the Skyriders. That's if you know Mike Lunney, he's going to bring up the Skyriders. It's kind of like a guy that owns a Harley. They always somewhere bring up the fact they have a Harley.
Right.
Mike Lunney will somewhere along the conversation bring up the Skyriders. So you just kind of have to nod your head and yeah, right, Mike, get back to business. Okay.
We remember Mike.
Yeah, we remember. Yeah, living in my past. Okay. But in terms of visual stuff, the best approach to a visual caption in marching band and choreo is all about one thing, really. If you want to boil it all down to the brass tacks kind of thing, it's acquiring a certain look on the field. You want a look. You want people to see your band and know exactly what your look is, what your vibe is, what you're doing. And that look's defined by some very definable points. Okay. One is demonstrating strength, marching through power. You know what I mean? We always want to look like we're powerful on the field. Number two, we want to make the show look easy. We
Right.
don't want
That's
there to
fair to
be
say.
any sense of the audience going, man, that is so hard. Look how they're struggling to get through that. That's a dangerous thing, so make the show look easy.
Well, I think that's what I was going to say. That one of the fastest ways to demonstrate strength is by making it look easy.
Oh yeah, no doubt at all. You
If they
know,
see everybody's going, you can make it, kid. Come on, get there. Oh, you can. I'm not sure that's demonstrating strength.
yeah,
As,
and
as
you do have to make it look easy. It's like I go to Planet Fitness and I walk on the treadmills with all the other gray-haired men. You know, and then you'll see the young bucks over in the weight area, and they're just slamming weights left and right, and then it would absolutely kill me. But they make it look so easy when they do it, and I shouldn't be so misogynistic. There's a lot of women over there slamming weights too, and walking treadmills. But you've got to somehow, and it's not like they're trying to make it look easy, but it shows their incredible strength, doesn't it?
they have command of it.
They have
Yeah.
command of it. They know what everything's doing, where every dumbbell and barbell is, and what they're doing with their body. It's amazing, and I really feel like, not to get too like, yeah, let's preach it, buddy. But you have to do the same thing in marching band. You have to be like that.
Glory.
Yeah, you have to be that weightlifter that just slams 250 pounds.
Yeah.
It's like this is nothing. So watch me do it again. Yeah, kind of that moment. And then the third one is, and this is sounds almost contradictory, but achieving graceful body lines. throughout this whole procedure, we want everything to look strong. We want everything to look easy, but we want it to look graceful. And now we've gone from like weightlifting into like premier ballerinas. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's you want those graceful body lines where nothing looks awkward. There's not a weird bent elbow or a weird hip shift where the hip is sticking out to the left or sticking out to the right, or the hips aren't underneath the spine. We're
You know,
leaning back.
you used a weird example. I'm gonna pull one in real quick. If
Okay,
you've ever
you go
watched
for it.
Dancing with the Stars,
Mhm.
they get all these people that they're teaching to dance, right?
Mhm.
And I'll watch some of that. My wife is a fan, it's not me. And
Yeah, right.
and and I watch them, I'm like, "They did that really well." I
Yeah.
mean, they did it. They're not as good as the pros they're with, but then they go to the people giving critiques and they're like, "You have to do your hand like this," or "You
Yes.
have to hold your head like this." And if you don't do that, you look like you're just bumbling through it to the trained eye,
Right.
as opposed to what you're saying, the graceful lines, the
Yes.
the little things that make it look, polished
Yes.
and refined. So, maybe that's a weird example, but
No,
I
that's
kinda
a
think that
perfect example.
because
And
they have to have the strength to do it, and they have to make it look easy, but they have to have the nuance.
yeah, but what a great example in a lot of ways, but especially in you watch that show and you see the drastic contrast between the professional and the one who's learning. And the one
Mhm.
who's learning looks 500 times better than I could ever do it. But you see that contrast, don't you?
Yeah,
And then the critique, the judges mention the fact that these are the things you need to do to look more like the professional. And that's
right.
just like marching band. It's a perfect
Great.
example. So I say everyone get out there and watch that
Go
show.
watch some past seasons.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And moving. And the fourth thing in that, in my opinion, is moving through each phrase with purpose. And the phrases in marching are usually the set points. Not always, but usually the set points. But you have to have this presence on the field that's easy to recognize. This is a funny quote, but it's easy to recognize but hard to describe.
I get it.
If you see a really good marching band, when I adjudicate, if I see a really good marching band, sometimes that's harder to talk about because you see it, you recognize it, but it is hard to describe why they're just incredible. But if a band is having problems, that's easier to describe. Hey,
Right.
trombone player, you need to get in step. That's easier to describe than saying than to give compliments to achievement in that. So basically you just kind of say, hey, but great job of achievement, your visual matches your music, man, I'm really enjoying it up here in the press box, great job,
Yep.
kids.
Yep,
you
yep.
know so you recognize it, but you can't really describe it. And here's the tough part, Derek. Our job as an educator is to communicate these ideas to our performers and the audience through the way we have them move, and it has to be both as individual performers and as a full ensemble.
Right.
That's a lot. Oh my gosh, that's why this thing's a series, because there's a lot going on here.
Right. I do think it's one of those things, Mike, though, that to encourage us as we start, that there will come a point where everybody goes, that's it. I felt it. I know it. It was right.
Yeah.
But we have to do these learning steps before we have a chance to hit that's indescribable spot.
Yes. It's a
So
cool moment. It's where it's like trying to catch lightning in a bottle, but it's a cool moment. It's when that band hears that slap back of sound coming off the bleachers, and they know that everyone stopped exactly right, correct, and beautiful posture and beautiful musical production. And there's just this sizzle that goes up your spine. You know what I mean?
right.
It's really a cool moment, and that's what we're looking for. That's what we're
Yeah,
looking for.
way ahead here, but when the band does that, when you hit that, the audience recognizes it,
Oh yeah,
and there's a reaction from the audience that sometimes makes me go, "Oh, I can't believe I get to do this." It's a complete, as you said, the audience, the ensemble, everybody feels it. So,
yeah. And my son puts it best. He's not a professional musician. He came through my band program, and he's a good trumpet player and a good marcher. But I was talking to him about a certain show, and I showed him a video, and I said, I can't quite put my finger on what I want right here. What do you think, Austin? And he goes, well, it doesn't have a popcorn moment. And I go, what are you talking about with your medical degree and all your education? What's a popcorn? I go, oh, Dad, when a band hits a moment on the field and you're at halftime and you're eating popcorn and you're talking to your family, and all of a sudden you turn your head and go, whoa, what was that? That's a
Yeah,
popcorn moment. And I said,
yeah.
man, that is absolutely correct. And he said, and I've watched bands long enough that there should be a popcorn moment every 60 seconds.
Look at him.
Yeah.
There's the doctor.
Yeah. He's got a doctorate in marching band as well. So it's
Every 60 seconds, you
yeah,
should heighten the cardiac rhythm.
that's right. We should be able to see it on the monitors. But no, but isn't it cool? Because, like you said, you don't have to be a trained musician in education and whatever, and then march 5 years of drum corps and be a caption head to understand this. You just have to be a kid who grew up in Abilene, Texas, that likes to eat popcorn and take his boys to the football game, but does watch the band.
Yes.
So take it for what it's worth. That audience member, they know, and we create that through our visual production, then that accents, if you might say, our musical production.
You know, I just want to say this because I think it's funny. For our friends listening everywhere across this great land, in Texas, especially West Texas, football is a really big deal. I mean, a lot of people think football is a big deal, but in West Texas, football is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And we always used to, you know, sarcastically say we went to a marching show and a football game broke out. And but the truth is, a lot of times at halftime, we knew we were doing well when all of the football people quit chitter chatting and, like as you say, their popcorn or they went to get, and they suddenly got quiet and started watching what we were doing and appreciating what the
Yeah.
marching band was doing. So,
Yeah.
um,
It's a neat
you know,
moment. And
and then I moved to a place where most of the people in the stands were the band parents. But
that happens
and
too. Yeah. That's
all right,
definitely something that happens too. Um,
you're getting me excited. I'm getting
all right,
rolling.
yeah,
Shut me down. Let's go.
Derek going, man. I got to get back to my script here, man. Derek's gonna steal my show. But we begin working towards that goal. It helps to recognize how our visual program of our group it overlaps other areas and components of our marching band. If we're doing a box drill to work on F. Remington, why can't we do that together and then put a body movement on each corner? You know what I mean? And
I do.
and keep a certain system where we're trying to do things time wise, efficiency wise, to where we do a certain warm up that contains the things that are for our particular marching show for this season, and then don't change that warm up as far as visual, as far as marching, because you're good. I hate to say, but you'll be wasting time if you musically. It's a really appropriate thing to do. Musically, change the warm up,
Okay.
keep them interested. Visually, to me that's a really stupid thing to do. Because I want the kids from what we teach them in summer band to be doing the same warm up at the stadium in San Antonio with not
Right.
one lick of difference. It's that way their brains, because it's a motor, memory, muscle, intensive process. It's not as intellectual as we'd like to believe. The music is intellectual. The visual movement is motor memory and physical and strength. And it's not,
Sure.
I need to think through this. No, you don't need to think through it. You just need to do reps on it and do it
Right.
the same way every day. So if we can get those kids to do that and realize that our marching technique and what we do in our warm-ups, this is an efficiency thing. I never presented any body movement. I never presented anything in our marching fundamentals that wasn't going to be done that particular year. Think about
Okay.
that.
That makes sense.
If we weren't going to do a mark time on the field, we didn't waste time doing a mark time
Okay.
in fundamentals. So it's just a matter in body movements. If we only had 3 or 4 different variations of body movements in our show, I'm not going to waste time teaching 20 body movements so we have this vocabulary to draw from. No,
Right.
let's teach them just what they need to know. They're on a need to know basis in the
Right.
band. We need
It's
to
not
know all
square
3.
dancing. We're not going to call out. Somebody's going to call out
Yeah.
something. You have to execute.
Yeah, and that's kind of how things. Remember, way in the past, my friend, when the drum major blew whistles, and
Right.
the band did a segue right or a counter left. And they knew what yard line to blow the whistle on, and everyone
Right.
followed the twirlers and majorettes, and that was important in those days. That was
Right.
very important. It's not so important now. It's not okay. So We have to develop clear and consistent definitions for everything we are teaching. At the end of the day, this activity focuses on one thing: uniformity. Uniformity. I don't care if you like toes together, toes apart, phantom regiment, third position on halts, marching backwards with bent knee, marching forwards with bent knee, bent leg approach, straight. We could go on and on with 1,000 things that happen. None of that really matters. What matters is that every kid moves the same way.
Right.
That's the point. Okay.
I agree with it. And the scary part of that point is it only takes one person not being uniform to go, "Hey, look at that."
Yes. Yeah, and they stick out. And it's a process. And I know, are we ever going to get all of our kids exactly the same? I doubt it unless you're at a very, very high level organization. We've got other things that, not every kid's going to achieve to that level. So I kind of put, this is just me, I kind of put a 90 percentile on it. If I can get 90% of my band doing things exactly right and the other 10% working hard at trying to get better, that's going to be, I hate to say this, so that's going to be good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. And let's be honest about this too. We talked about this in a previous episode. We don't have people on the field most of the time looking for everything in every section, front and back. You still got people up in a press box looking down from, 40, 50 yards away. As long as
Yeah.
90% of the people are doing it right, it's not going to be like, oh my gosh, you got 10% of your band out of step.
Yeah. And the quiet part out loud, just make sure when you're setting drill and putting kids in drill spots, make sure your best marchers are the most visible.
Facing forward. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So many times you'll see like the three worst marchers in a band, and I'm watching that band, and they're between the 45s, 6 steps behind the front sideline the whole show, and they're just bumping into each other, and they're unsure, and you can tell they're working hard, and they show up for band every day, but put them further back, put some people between the judges and the poorer marchers. There's
Even for
nothing
their
wrong with
sake.
that. Yeah, for their
Yeah.
sake too. So and they will get better if they're not on the 50-yard line because they feel that pressure, my friends.
Right.
They
Take that
feel it.
spotlight off of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and let them do their thing because I've had kids that were not very good marchers, but were incredible musicians. So
Yeah.
I didn't want to pull them off the field. And a lot of our bands, we don't have the luxury of pulling kids off the field. If
Right.
you have a band of 40 kids, you can't have 10 alternates because the next year you'll have 30 in band, then have 10 alternates. The next year you'll have 20 in band. Do 10
Right.
alternates. Next year you have 10 in band. You see the process. It's
Yeah.
happening. They're just not going to stay with you because what's the use of working all week if you never get to perform with the band?
Right.
So just take that for what it's worth. Find a place for them, but it doesn't have to be on the 50-yard line, surrounded by the guard, accenting their every incorrect move. Place them in the drill where they're useful to you and they can keep improving as an individual. So the purpose of this podcast series is have key points of our movement and our marching program eventually for each director in written form. I can give my leadership and my staff my 9-page handout. I try to keep it concise, and it has how we do everything that we're going to do in the show. And that way it's written down. And there's something about that because we all learn differently, don't we, Derek?
Right.
Some
Right.
people, we know musicians that learn by ear, they're auditory. Um, I know musicians that learn by reading the music. That's me. I'm a visual person. When I memorize music, I memorize what the piece of music looks like on my stand.
Right. And I'm a transcriber.
Yeah.
I rewrite it. I write the part out and put the chords where they're supposed to go. And by the time I get through that process, I've got a mental
Yeah.
image of how that works.
And the third one that's a definite way is just muscle memory, kinesthetic. They just do it. They just do it enough times because every musician out there could attest to this. Have you ever got in the middle of a memorized piece and you kind of forget what you're doing, but your fingers keep going?
Yeah. Or it's the same way with scales. I don't
Yeah.
sit and think about every scale note anymore. My fingers do what they're supposed to do
No.
for that scale.
And we're all kind of a combination of all three of those, actually,
Yeah.
but we all have our primary one. So with your kids, especially and your staff, and whoever's involved with your production, if you give it to them in a written form, then you teach it to them in an auditory form, then you make them do it in a kinesthetic form. Guess what? we've now met the needs of every person on the field and every person in my staff, and we're all happy and we have popsicles. Okay.
Yeah. Pops.
It's popsicle break.
That's
The
funny.
band moms are here with the popsicles.
That's
So you can approach every person, but if you just kind of yell at them and auditory wise and just tell them what to do and they can't do it and you're just yelling at them, you're missing the boat. If you just hand them the written part and say, hey, go home and figure it out, you're missing the boat. If you just repeat it over and over thinking they're finally going to get it, they're never going to finally going to get it. You
right.
know, it has to be a combination of all three of those being prevented or put together, not prevented, but presented. So yeah, prevent. We want to prevent any education from marching band.
Say a little Freudian slip there.
Yeah, that's right. No education will be evident in our marching program. This is like the guys
That's
rowing the
funny.
big oars on the boat. You know, that's our
That's funny.
that's our education. But you know, we want it all in a written form because most band directors that I found don't really have it in a written form. But of all strangeness, the really good marching bands I see, their band directors all have it in a written form.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
And you know what? Some of that's innate. Some people, they just know that that's what needs to happen. There's nothing wrong if you aren't doing it yet, but we're trying to shed the light that it will help you if
Yeah,
you'll write this stuff down
yeah. And
or
I
if you'll find it in written form. Yeah.
and I literally I had a clinician come out early in my career when I was in Electra, and they asked me. He was a director at a major school over in Wichita Falls, and he said, "Well, I'm here today to kind of help you out, Mike. Show me your band manual on marching technique." And I go, I
My what?
don't. And this is a true story. And I go, I don't have one. He goes, oh, okay, I'm leaving.
Wow.
And he goes, but as soon as you have one written down, said, if you want help, said, give me a call and I'll show you what to do and I'll send you mine. You can edit it. But unless you have everything written down, said, I'm wasting my time because I don't know what to tell them. Get your toes apart. No, we do toes together. Oh, well, it'd be nice if I had it written down somewhere.
If I'd have known that, right?
That even if it's just one page, he said, it doesn't have to be an extensive manual, just one page. Said, and the feeling was, well, Mike, you're wasting my time. He didn't say it that way necessarily, but he just said, well, I'm going to go because I'm wasting my time. Yeah, he didn't say I was wasting, but I knew what he meant. Okay.
But I could read between those lines.
Yeah. I grew up with a disciplinarian. But and the other thing about writing it down is that all the teachers, whether they're your staff members, your drum majors, your section leaders, that we all teach movement exactly the same way, or at least have a format to teach it. So, because I found out real quick, if you just tell your section leaders to show the kids how to, in their section, how to step off and move forward 8 counts and halt, you'll see about 100 different variations because they'll do it the way they think it should be done.
Right.
This is we're the trombones is how we do it. We're the flutes. We do it this way. So you've got to have it written down to where you can walk over and go, hey, Sam, that's not how we have it in the manual, is it? Okay, Mr. Lunney. It
Right.
gives a little bit of credibility to helping to correct when they kind of veer off the what we're doing.
I got it. Got it.
And the next one is, we've got to focus somewhere along the way on movement training. It's the way muscle groups and body awareness are developed because you've got to be able to, as a performer, be able to stand there and you've got to know exactly where your hips are. Are they underneath your spine? Are you leaning back? Are your toes apart? Are they together? And I know this sounds real dumb to say, so I apologize for that. But they've got to be able to feel all that without looking down.
No, that doesn't.
Yeah, and they don't. Sometimes they don't. You say your toes aren't at 90 degrees, and they're going, oh, and they'll look down. Oh, they're not. But there's a certain muscle memory that they feel when their toes are at 90 degrees. If that's what your goal is, okay. So our goal is. Oh, go ahead.
Mike, we used to, the drum majors. It was kind of a call and response thing, and I still hear people do it. But even when we're standing at attention, and they would say head, and we'd all say up, shoulders back, feet together. Made us think about those. Are those things actually happening? I know I'm saying it,
Yeah.
but I think the accountability part is don't just say it. Are you really doing it? And I realize that's maybe somewhat off topic, but
No, not
there
at
has
all.
to be some mnemonic thing that allows them to stop and assess, am I doing this right? And I
Yeah. So
think
they have better body awareness.
right.
Yeah.
So just thought we used to do that and scream it, and we were all proud.
Yeah, we made one kind of a the Onion, the satirical kind of thing. We did one for band directors. It was like brain tired, belly out, coffee full. So we did one to entertain the kids as the staff.
That's
So
funny.
we had our own band director one where the drum major just yell it out, we'd respond back. You know,
That's great.
uh, but our goal is to move well as humans first, and then apply those movement concepts to our marching. So everything that we do in movement, even if we don't realize it at first because it's awkward, has to become a natural physical way of how we move. Something as blatantly simple as like when you hold a trumpet and put your fingers over the valves. Do you realize that when we cup our hand, it's the same as like holding a baseball?
Right.
And if you put your hand on the top of your leg and you're seated and let your fingers relax, they make that exact shape. So
I just did it.
it's the most natural thing in the world. So if a kid's got their fingers flat or they got them
Yeah.
super arched, and you just tell them, said, no, we're not trying to tell you to do something awkward. What you're doing is kind of awkward, So do it in the means that's the most natural for your body,
Or use the term ergonomic.
Yeah.
It, it's the most efficient thing that your body could do because that's what it's natural.
Yeah, and this isn't part of this necessarily part of this podcast, but wanted to throw out there kind of as a teaser for things to come. When you have bell front instruments like marching baritones, mellophones, etc., trumpets, they will tend to bend their wrist when they hold their horn. If they bend their wrists when they with an S, I can't speak well, but when they bend their wrist when they hold their horn, all the weight of the horn is in their biceps.
Mm,
If they make their wrist straight, then all the weight of the horn is on their lats and their back.
that's cool.
And that way they have a
I never
bigger
thought about
muscle
that.
group to hold their horn. And if you explain it that way, then you tell them to do it that way. And all of a sudden they'll look at you like, oh my gosh, that's like so much easier.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, it's ergonomic, and it's things that I've picked up along the way that I try to throughout this. There's no extra charge for that little snippet. That's your little band hack for the day. Kind of, if nothing else, they might just get that out of this podcast, and I'd be excited for one thing is a victory for me,
Right.
um, so kind of going forward in this process, and this is kind of what we have to figure out as performers and educators. Marching well means marching. That means just moving your feet, hitting the set, kind of old school thought.
Mhm.
Marching well
Line
means,
space, middle space.
means separating the upper half of your body from the lower half. How many times as kids were we told, from our waist down, we are marching machines, from our waist up, we're musicians?
Okay.
And that's kind of the mantra we lived by. The two were never combined. It's like we should be able to, if the band, this is a strange analogy or an example, but if the band were able to march in a swimming pool that came up to their waist, and everyone was the same height, then you would see these gliding bodies making beautiful music above the
Oh,
water.
wow.
But underneath the water, it'd be like a duck. Those little legs on a duck are going crazy while that duck just smoothly goes across the lake. And that's how we have to approach kind of our body physical aspect as far as just good old marching. We're getting from set one to set two. So something to think about. It's a great analogy to give to your band about the duck. The duck's legs are just going crazy under the water. But if you watch that beautiful duck or that swan on the lake, you don't see that, do you? You just
Right.
see the,
Just a
the
glide.
beauty of the
Yeah.
animal. You see the glide. Now, here's the tricky part. And this is where it becomes so hard, and directors kind of push back because it is very difficult. Moving well,
Okay.
contrasting marching well. Moving well means integrating the upper half with the lower half. Now we have to use both the upper and the lower half together in conjunction so that we create that visual line or that gracefulness to when we do choreography or whatever we're doing. Okay. So there's that weird disconnect where the kids have to know when it's upper body, lower body should be contrasted. And when it's upper body, lower body should be one entire being as we do it. And, the question is, can we do both? Can we march well and move well? Absolutely. The biggest difference has to do with the approach. You just have to approach it where you're treating exercise as you're warming up in band as a full body experience rather than having separate exercises for upper body and lower body. And that's tough to do sometimes because in most band warm-ups, we start, let's say, okay, everybody get your feet apart. Let's touch our toes. Let's relax your neck. Okay, now flex your shoulders, roll them forward, roll them back into the socket. Now put your arm across your body. And can you see by what I'm saying that I'm separating every part of the body?
Right.
And there's place for that. Don't get me wrong. There's a place for that. But if it ends there, and then you try to teach a kid how to do plie or a rom de jambe or an arabesque,
Right.
then they're like going, I don't know what you mean, Mr. Lunney. My body
Because
is
you've
all.
only done it in isolated movement.
Yes. So you break down the little tiny movements in the body movement and you sneakily, is that a word? That's a George Bushyism. Okay. You sneakily,
Through strategery, we're going to sneakily.
our strategeries, we're going to sneakery and we're going to sneakerize some of these little tiny moments of our body movement into our actual warm up and exercise. Yeah. Yeah. Good impression there. You're better than me. So it can be done in a way that you're not saying, hey kids, let's work on dance movement. And then half the band goes, I don't want to do this.
I don't want to dance.
Yeah. You say, no, do this. As you reach out, now let's put our feet apart and let's reach between the midpoint between our platforms of our feet and just let your fingers go all the way down. Now, gradually slide your upper body to where your fingers are pointed at your right toes. And now gradually go the other direction smoothly. Now rise back up and bring your arms in the air and let your fingertips touch. Now bring your fingers down, your hands down to the side of your body. You're not necessarily teaching a dance move, but they will do it.
Right.
They will do it. It's the same as like a band sometimes won't want to sing, but you can always get them to hum.
Yeah.
They'll hum and then say, now hum louder, hum
now
louder.
Hum with your mouth open.
Yeah. The one in between, I'd say hum so loud that the tip of your nose tickles. And they'll hum and say, now open your mouth. Oh, you're singing. I caught you.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of cool, but you kind of have to do that with the body movement. Utilizing dance techniques is often a new experience for individuals and ensembles expecting to march. And we all know they're going to be resistant. And sometimes directors, the resistance for them to teach it comes from multiple sources. One is the kids are pushing back, and who wants to have a miserable rehearsal if you're the head director?
Right.
And the other is that we don't know how to teach it. We don't have a system in place.
I'm going to tell you, I think that's more often the case.
Yeah.
And so much of it, I think you said this, but it's semantics. It's how you present it. It's the enthusiasm with which you present it. Because let's be honest, Mike, if I go in front of the group and I say, in my mind, I'm thinking, they're going to push back on this. This is going to be a long, long day of trying to get them to do something they don't want to do.
Yeah.
As opposed to, man, we're going to do some stuff today that is going to make our group stand out so much higher. You know what I mean? And maybe that's easy for me to say, but
no, you're right. Your attitude to it, and give the kids something to achieve in terms of exactly what you said. In terms of, if we're wanting to be competitive at a hardware kind of thing, we want to get the trophy. Then we're going to have to do the things these bands that are achieving and winning. We have to do the things they do, just do it better. But if we just refuse to do it at all, then we're giving away those points to those groups, and they're more than happy to take them.
To hit the other side of that coin, I don't care if you give me a trophy or not. We're going to do this better than everybody else.
Yeah, that's right.
This is who we are.
Yeah. It's the evolution, and we don't all, not every director is going to agree on it. I mean, I get pushback all the time from directors that are, especially those old guys that think I should be in their camp, said, are you going to dance your way to a second division? And it's like, well, it is what it is, so
but I've come so far around the corner. The hardware is incidental. If you're doing stuff well, the hardware is incidental.
Yeah.
It just happens. And maybe that's not the right way to say it, but anyway, without devolving into a different podcast.
That's right. But just like you said, you can force your way through it. Try to get a good vocabulary of what you're doing. I know this sounds really kind of like a rom de jambe. I just call it toe circles.
I don't even know what a rom de jambe is.
A squat. A tendu is a toe point. And sometimes if you just call them names that would make a ballerina cringe, And in fact, I will gladly say when I was at Wiley, I had some amazing ballet performers in my group. I mean, they performed for Swan Lake here in town, and
Right.
they were incredible dancers. And they would just cringe when we would teach a rom de jam because they're going, Mister, that's not even close to what, but it's what marching bands do. So if you have a really accomplished dancer, don't make this mistake. Don't have them teach the band how to do it
Right.
because they are incredible.
Exactly.
And they understand that what we're doing is a uh, dancing for dummies approach, to what they do on a daily basis.
That's the quickest way to a nope.
Yeah, that's right. They'll
All right.
go. No, it just gets beyond. I mean, it just blows up out of control.
Right.
But going on in this particular format, traditional marching instruction tends to focus on uniformity over technique. Think about that for a second. That even though our technique are close to the same, I mean, there was a time when the uniformity, you had to be in step and you had to hold your horn correct. But there was little tiny glitches here and there that weren't considered important. Because it was just uniformity. And it wasn't like let's spend a lot of time on technique. I guess the best way to say it, I'm kind of rambling. The best way to say it is we would learn uniformity by 1,000 repetitions.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was saying at the beginning.
Yeah,
as far as I knew, that's what marching band was.
Yeah, we didn't break down our step off and 6 to 5 marching into 4 distinct segments. We just watched Leroy, who marched ahead of us, who was a senior when we were a freshman, and we tried to make our feet match exactly what Leroy was doing. And that's
Keep your interval, cover down.
Yeah, and Leroy turned around and yelled at us, and we said, "Yes, sir, Leroy."
Got it.
We just repeated 1,000 times. But I think it's harder to do that nowadays because there's more body movement involved. So we do literally have to teach some level of this is the technique of how we do it to achieve uniformity. But if technique's presented in a series of evolution for your band, then it challenges every performer to achieve at a higher level. Okay. So what we're trying to do is give that technique to them, and a little disclaimer that's not really even in my notes. It is a little bit later, but only do what your group can handle at the time you are given. You're not going to get blood out of a turnip. You know what I mean? You're just gonna piss them off.
Well, it's a recipe for frustration. Everybody's frustrated.
Yeah, and then we're mad because these kids are just not even trying. No, they're not
frustrated.
trying. Yeah.
Kids are frustrated.
Everybody's pissed off. Then at the dinner table, they're talking about how what an ass Mr. Lunney's being today, and then I'm at the dinner table talking about how apathetic my kids are, and then we come back to rehearsal the next day and just stare at each other to assert dominance. Yeah, we're just trying to assert dominance quickly, and then we're gonna go, "What are we doing? This is marching band. We're not in a prison yard, exercise yard. What are we doing?"
Posturing.
Yeah, we're posturing. Yeah, they're bowing up to us, and we're getting mad and throwing bullhorns. I don't know.
Ooh, boy.
Yeah. All the testosterone's flowing. But just get that technique and just figure out what can my kids do today. Can we just introduce one little piece of body movement inside a little tiny 5-minute warm up? And that's fine. I know a really great band program that has had multiple gold medals. And I know it's not all about the gold medals, but he would always joke about when they started to incorporate body movement and so forth, they had one little movement where they raised their hand above their head in like a cupped motion, like they were feeling for rain, and they looked at their fingertips. And that was the only body movement in the whole show.
Wow.
And he said, and that's where it started. We had one little tiny body. And the next year said, "Hey, you remember that? The audience would always clap when y'all did that." It's like Pavlov's dog. When you did that, the audience always clapped. He forgot to tell them it was the end of the tune, so they're going to clap. But he said, "But let's add 3 more things." Oh, yeah, let's do it. And so they had 3 more things. And finally, they're just all over the place doing all cool stuff. And it's like, they don't realize it's hard unless you make it difficult and overwhelm them with it,
But there's genius there because he was referencing something that they knew, they remembered the positive feedback.
Yeah, you're exactly
right.
How
How positive that was? Let's find some more places to get some positive feedback like that.
Yeah, we all have that in our brainstem, don't we? Have you ever made them? I know you haven't, Derek, because you're an outstanding Christian man. But have you ever said a bad word in front of a toddler?
and
and
then
everybody
eat it
laughs.
immediately.
Everybody laughs. So for the next 5 days, all that toddler does is say that word over and over because they had that immediate positive. All five people in the room go, "What? Check that out! Check out
Okay,
what little Leroy
I'm
did."
gonna incorporate everything you said in one short story.
Oh no!
When we when we first got married, my oldest, we were good pals. So if I don't think there's any danger of Lee hearing this, but we started attending the church that I grew up in, and I went up to say hi to the pastor because I'm a good Christian man, as you said.
That's
And
outstanding.
I said, "Pastor, enjoyed today, blah blah blah." And he looked at my son. He goes, "Hey, guy," and my son looked him in the eye and said, "Party naked, dude."
I love it.
So he repeated
Oh
somebody
yeah.
somewhere he'd heard that.
Yeah, my own personal story. Now we're really going down a tangent. Was the preacher came to visit our house, and I was like 5 years old, and so I answered the door, and I turned to my mom and goes, "Hey, the damn preacher's here." And the preacher just died. He goes, "Well, he's heard that somewhere." And my mom's turning
Exactly.
30 shades of red.
That's
Hey,
great.
hey, mom, the damn preacher's here. Because I just thought his name was Damn Preacher.
Correct. Oh, that's funny.
Oh, Lord help us. But yeah, back to the original point though, because those are great stories. I've enjoyed that moment. Um, Whatever they get positive reinforcement from, they will be more than happy to repeat.
Yeah,
So if they get applause and the other bands go, "Wow, that was really cool." Hey, we're really cool. So let's do
right.
more of that.
But it all started from one movement that got
Yeah,
the positive
yes.
response.
Just
So,
one tiny thing and the audience clapped. And so here's some keys for our success in trying to figure out what our band needs. They need to
okay.
reach a point of understanding of the techniques and the movement fundamentals. And it's going to take some time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take commitment. And the hard thing is we don't have a lot of time, do we? So
Right.
only teach what you have to teach. As you move through this whole series of podcasts, there's going to be several real fundamental concepts that'll help
Okay.
you in your development. As it becomes more complex, it all kind of boils down to these same things, or I call them the core principles. Number one is relaxation. Our bodies must look powerful, but they must look relaxed in terms of not lazy relaxed, but there shouldn't be any
Right.
undue
Not a
tension.
slouch. Right.
Yeah, not a slouch, but no undue tension, no locking of knees and gritting of teeth and squinting of eyeballs and whatever. There just need to be a sense of relax. This is just the way we stand and the way we move. It's not a position of tension. The
Right.
next one is concentration. It's a core principle. They have to be able to concentrate on every body move throughout the show, and that brings up a really important point because this is what I've heard. Now, I'm sure some scientists out there will dispute this, but the human mind cannot think of two things at exactly the same time
I
consciously.
agree with that.
One has to be by habit. Now, we're real smart, at least Derek is, so he can switch back and forth between two things very quickly. He can drive down the road, he can look at a speedometer, and he can see a turn signal. He can look in the rearview mirror, and he can go back and forth. But he's consciously thinking about that one little tiny moment each time. But his brain's allowing him to flip back and forth. But you can't look at the rearview mirror and think about what the speedometer's doing.
Right.
So putting that in marching, you've got to have something memorized. And I always
You're
tell
saying,
my kids, memorize the music first because that's the easiest one to memorize.
is this muscle memory by and large what some things become so you don't have to think about it anymore? It's the same thing when I try to play guitar and sing. If it's a
Yeah,
complex strum, I can't think about the strum and the words at the same time, and there's plenty of video online to prove that.
yeah.
But
That's a
but
perfect example, by the way. I hadn't thought about that, but a good guitarist that plays and sings, you're exactly right. They can't concentrate on both at the same time.
or when I'm playing bass and there's a lot of syncopation, if I try to sing with the syncopation, it's going to I will sing in syncopation even if I'm not supposed to. But same
And
thing though. It's
you're
because I'm
right.
trying to think of everything instead of putting in the time to develop the muscle memory so I don't have to think about that part and I can think about the stuff that I need to at the moment.
That's
But
exactly right. And that's where you get into your marching band, just from your example, with that syncopation, you get that herky jerky body movement because they're trying
right,
to make their body movement do something that they're hearing the percussion do.
right.
So it's important to kind of think about that. So that concentration on one thing at a time, being able to switch back and forth. I always like to say we want to march with angry feet and we want to march with
That's
crazy
such a
eyes.
funny thing to say.
Yeah, angry feet. Those feet have to be because anger causes, it's not always good motion, but anger causes determination, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Angry people are determined. So our feet must be angry. You don't have to be angry, but your feet must be angry and determined in what they do. And your eyes must be what I call crazy eyes.
Right.
Your head can't turn, but your eyes must be going back and forth the whole time, like some kind of crazy person on the field. So if I come up to you and I'm watching you march, I should see your eyes going left and right, going moving around, looking up forward, looking down to the ground. Your head doesn't move unless it's a body movement, but you must have crazy eyes, as you march, and
I never thought
that
about
creates
that
that
though.
concentration.
Anger creates very intentional movement.
Yes, there's no doubt,
Yeah.
and it's not always great movement, by the way. But in marching band, it's kind of, you know, it's confined to what we're doing on the field.
Got it.
There's plenty of people get angry and then punch a wall and bust their knuckles. But that's a very determined movement, isn't it? I'm going to punch
Yeah.
that brick wall with my hand. That's a
And
very determined movement. It's a stupid movement.
typically
Very
not done
determined.
apologetically. Yeah.
No, not apologize. Oh, they wish they hadn't have done it, but they're not like, they
After
don't
the
think
fact.
about it before they do it. So crazy feet are angry feet and crazy eyes. Okay, so take that as your
It's a country song.
takeaway for. Hey, that's a good. I'm gonna write that. I'm gonna get on that stupid little AI program.
Your angry feet and crazy eyes.
Bring me back to the marching field each day.
Perfect.
All right, the next one, going right along before we get too deep in the woods and the weeds on that one. Alignment. Our body has to be, when we're marching, the alignment has to occur, and we'll get into that later in the podcast. But just basically, that little bone behind your ear must be lined up with your shoulders, must be lined up with your hip bone, must be lined up with your knees, with your ankle bone, and that alignment has to stay the same. The most common one to screw up is your head moving, and for a lot of students, their pelvis moving forward and not being tucked under their spine, because they're trying to cantilever, is that the proper term, for the weight of the instrument in front of their body. Okay, so the alignments. And the next one is breathing, and we're going to go over that. How we take breaths. That sounds funny because from the time you're born and you're slapped on the butt, you take a breath. But you have to learn how to breathe correctly in marching band. Something is another takeaway for breathing. I've learned a long time ago, when students are marching and not playing, let's say they're moving 16 counts, they should be breathing in 4, breathing out in 4, breathing in 4, breathing out in 4. As they move that 16, it cleanses their lungs, it cleanses their body, it gets rid of all the spent air in their lungs, and it keeps them on task. Because a lot of kids, if you watch them closely, this will blow your mind, marching band directors. If you get on that field and watch them closely, a lot of kids hold their breath during rest.
I'd never thought about that.
They will move 16 counts and you will not see their rib cage move. And you're going, you're holding your breath. Well, I'm trying to get this marching stuff right. No, we're not diving under 10 feet of water. I want you to breathe.
Right.
Breathe in for 4, breathe out for 4. And we work on that marching
air at that point. Yeah.
It's all spin air. Now you got a big old lung full of air. And then what are you supposed to do on count 16?
Yeah.
Take a deep breath. Oh my God.
And that's what happened.
Even got Derek caught up in that one. Okay. And our center or core strength is the next concept. That musculature of our abdomen and our rib cage, and that core strength determines how all of our appendages move. So that has to be strong. And we're going to go over how we do that. It's not a big deal, but it's just a matter of a series of exercises. Coordination. Some students are more coordinated than others. I'm not a very coordinated person. I mean, I can ice skate. I can throw a baseball. I'm not a dancer. I'm not coordinated.
Right.
And some of your kids are not coordinated. But I tell you what, I can do little tiny snippets of something if I rep it enough times. And that's what we have to do with our kids who are not real strong in that. Okay. And then the next one is fluidity. That sounds like a really important word. It sounds like fluid dynamics or something. Fluidity. That when we're doing body movements, there has to be.
It sounds like Homer Simpson when you.
It does. Yeah.
The fluidity.
But when we teach the body movement by counts, but then we can't execute the body movement by herky-jerky counts. There has to be a certain fluid motion to it as it happens. And the next one's a misspelling on my nose. This is stamina. It's meant to be stamina. And for you guys who are downloading all these notes that Rick puts up there, please have some forgiveness for my stupidity. I barely have an 8th grade education, and they just put up with me through high school and college. So please,
Let's talk about that core concept of satamina.
yeah, satamina. Man, I could have made up a whole definition for that, and half my listeners would have gone, "Man, I'm gonna use that."
I'm going to write that down.
I'm going to write that down. Satamina is very important to your band program. Just the stamina of being able to physically get through your show. How many programs? I know you do a lot of announcing, Derek, and a lot of watching. How many bands do you see that start real super strong and it just gets weaker and weaker and
Yep.
weaker? And it's not that they don't care; it's they just don't have the physical stamina and maybe not the intellectual stamina. Stamina, as I said,
What? Okay, George.
stamina to make it through the whole show. Their brain shuts down and their muscles shut down, and they just flounder through the last 13 seconds. And you're like going, "Oh my God, what just
We're
happened?"
creating our own lexicon.
Their stamina has dissolved. I'm going to use that now. Now it's a deal. It's a deal. It's not going to be stamina. That way the kids will remember what I'm saying. Make sure your stamina is correct.
It's an Ask Mikeism.
Yeah, that's right.
But you
Oh,
know what?
Lord.
Talking about the standard, we've had this conversation too, and I know that you'll go into it probably in a future episode. But sometimes it's because we don't work on the fluidity of the entire show, and they don't have the stamina because we never do the whole show all the time.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll let you teach, and I'll just go.
No. That's correct. We worked really hard to always have at least two full blown run throughs at the end of a big rehearsal, and at
Mhm.
least one on Friday.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would literally have to take all the microphones away from myself and from the staff, and just tell them you are not allowed to yell out anything. You're not allowed to correct anything. They've got to deal with it.
Yep.
They've got to deal with it. They can't. Yeah, otherwise, they feel really awkward when they perform because they're used to having people, this omnipotent voice above them, telling them what they're doing wrong and what they're doing right, and reminders. So,
You know, even another part of it though is we have such an adrenaline jazz when we first start
mhm,
that once we calm back down, and unless we teach that or we remind everybody that this is a 15-minute proposition here or 8-minute proposition, sorry,
yeah,
and you're going to have to pace through this.
yeah,
There's big moments. There's moments for you to breathe in for 4 counts and out for 4 counts. You need to do that.
right.
So, wow, look
And
at me trying to.
no, you're exactly right. There's a great YouTube of where they took a tenor player from the Cavaliers, and they put this big mask on them that could detect the intake and outtake of oxygen, and put electrodes on him to kind of figure out his heart rate. And they were trying to show that how athletic this was, that how high his heart rate got, and how much oxygen was being used when he marched to show for the Cavies. But my takeaway was this: the doctor or the scientist who was running the experiment, he said as soon as that man picked up his tenor drums, his heart rate went up 30 beats a minute.
Oh yeah, escalated. Yeah.
I mean, it just immediately, it was like a horse at the gate. You know what I mean? It was like shkunk, and he put that harness on. His heart rate, his body was preparing for that huge rush of adrenaline that was about
Yeah.
to happen. But if you ever have a chance, find that thing on YouTube.
That sounds cool.
It's really cool. You know. So we've got through our Satama, and we've got through our fluidity, and we've got through. We're devolving now. We're devolving.
Oh,
The
that's
last thing to
great.
finish this podcast is kind of a program overview, and this might be kind of this big picture idea might be kind of different to some people. If it is, give it a thought, see what you like. But it's important for each individual performer to understand how all these pieces fit together. What we're doing, and what we're going to use in this whole series is a technique called backward planning. Backward planning begins with the big picture. It's what we want to accomplish at the end of the season. Then we work backwards from that point to ensure that everything we do fits into that picture. How do we set up our rehearsal blocks? How do we set up our performances? Excuse me. How do we set up things to where the students understand first what the big picture is? So I like to play them full recordings of the show. Now we have the technology to do it. It's awesome. Full recordings of the show with the drill. So they can watch
Yeah.
it on the big screen in the band hall, or they can watch it on their phone, and they can see their dot.
Yeah.
They see the big picture. So
Cool. It also gives you a sounding board to bounce everything. Like if you're trying to decide, is this worth my time? How does this fit that big picture? Does
Yes.
this help the big picture? If it doesn't, I'm not, just like you said at the beginning, why am I going to teach you how to mark time if we're not going to mark time even one time in the show?
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback on that with body movement, if we have like, let's say we want to do 4 body movements. So we teach them in summer band, right?
Right.
Because we don't want to wait until it happens in the drill to go, oh, by the way, we're going to do this here.
Here's a
So
fun wrinkle.
all of a sudden, out of those 4, 3 of them they could do well in summer band. The 4th one, they were having a lot of problems. Big picture moment, knock that thing out of there and repeat one of the first 3 to do
Right.
it. And I'll say this about body movement because so many times I'll get to a clinic and they'll say, and I'll say, man, the body movement's not really working real well here. I said, well, we don't teach it until we get to there. And I'm thinking, do you do that with your concert band music? Like, you get it all learned and then you go and say, all right, we got 2 weeks before contest. There's this thing called dynamics. We haven't addressed it yet, but let's start working on that now. Is it going to be good? And they'll go, well, no, you only got 2 weeks. And don't you start teaching a little bit of all of it? Think about that for a second. You teach a little bit of all of it throughout the
Right.
process so that the kids know what's going on. So if you're waiting till set 45 to teach a rom de jam and they've never done it before, then you're going to waste about 3 rehearsals where you could have done it in summer band and incorporated it into your warm up, and it had gotten gradually better over the course of a month. And then you could say, oh, by the way, this is where the rom de jam happens. And they're like, oh, okay. And they just do it, you
Right.
know? So that's kind of our big picture thing. So my big hope is that this series of podcasts is going to give you guys tools out there to make your band better and hopefully make your job easier. It allows you to make your band leadership into little tiny assistant band directors. And I would appreciate any feedback. Marching and visual work, we've said this contains a lot of opinions. You want to know how to do something in marching band? Just ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different opinions. So my way is not the right way. My way is just seems to be the way that's worked for me and it's worked in my style of teaching. So I challenge you to listen to these podcasts and take the things you like and make it your own. And if my way works for you, steal the whole thing. If nothing I do works for you, ignore it and do your thing, because there's so many great teachers out there, and it's not that we do it all the same way. We all do it the right way, and that's a
Right.
cool thing.
So, I would even elaborate on what you said. If you do have, if you've got great experience doing some of the stuff we're talking about today, and you said, I agree with you, and this is how I made that work, or if you say I don't agree with you, and here's why, we'd both love to have that conversation with you. Give us a heads up. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, Give us a quick tease, man. Where we headed in episode 2 of this part?
Well, episode 2, I mean, they're not really in segments.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
Where we headed next, I guess is
We're going to
That's what
kind
I'm
of go
trying to say.
deeper into those 8 core principles that we listed in that first podcast
Okay.
with an explanation of each. And we're going to go into kind of that posture and alignment of how I teach a band, how they stand with strength on the field, and some exercises you can incorporate into your warm-up sequence that won't be just stretch your shoulders, stretch your arm, touch your toes. It'll be things that'll actually help the band become better at what they do on the field. So that's your
Yeah.
tease for number 2 coming up.
Well, I actually saw it looked like a quick scan, parallel foot swings. I can't wait to hear what that is.
That's right. Yeah. It's a great name for a band. I mean,
The parallel foot swing.
parallel foot swings are opening up for Coheed.
With angry feet and crazy eyes.
That's right. That's right. We perform.
Cool. Hey, man, enjoy your week.
You too. It's good talking.